I talk too fast sometimes.
That's okay. Pretty fast.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I want to now call this meeting to order. I want to acknowledge the Police and Fire Pension Fund Executive Director John Keene. John, we're pleased to meet with you and your team in the hopes of achieving retirement reform now. It's appropriate that we are starting these meetings in the Linwood Robert Room at City Hall. I want to acknowledge all the council members who are here. Councilman Bill Bishop is here. Councilman Clay Yarborough is here. And Councilman Greg Anderson is here. Thank you all for being here. In this room, the 17 dedicated members of Jacksonville Retirement Task Force met over many months to help the City of Jacksonville solve our biggest financial challenge. Chairman Shy and several of the task force members are here today. I want to thank them again for their hard work and dedication. As a task force, they help to provide the final burst of momentum needed to achieve retirement reform. And I'm very grateful for their efforts. We can all agree on one thing. The stubborn issue of retirement reform has persisted far too long, and I think now's the time to make sure that we achieve retirement reform now. Taxpayers need us to achieve reform so we can stabilize our budget and provide quality services to the citizens of our community. Sheriff Rutherford and Chief Senefit need us to achieve reform so they can retain and recruit without uncertainty about pensions. Public safety employees need us to achieve reform so that they can focus on their important work. The rating agencies need us to achieve reform so that the city maintains its excellent credit rating. Let us achieve reform now. We must finish this as soon as possible so that taxpayers, city employees, and the rating agencies know that Jacksonville means business. Taxpayers need closure. Our city employees need closure. And if we move quickly, we can send a strong message of resolve from Wall Street to Main Street. Let us achieve retirement reform now. Before I introduce the individual who will moderate these discussions, let me make one thing clear. These discussions will be held in the sunshine. The meetings between the parties will be noticed to the public in advance. They will be open for the public to attend. In order to ensure all members of the public have the access, these discussions will be recorded, and a court reporter will also be a part of this to record it. The meeting videos and written transcript will be placed on the City of Jacksonville Retirement Reform website. Before I turn it over to John Keene for a few introductory comments, I want to introduce the moderator for these discussions, Rod Smith. Rod Smith has a distinguished career practicing employment law, criminal law, and civil justice law. From 1993 to 2000, Mr. Smith served as a state attorney of the 8th Judicial Circuit Court based in Gainesville. As a state attorney, he prosecuted the Danny Rollins case and was nationally recognized by the Association of Capital Litigators as one of the nation's preeminent prosecutors. Since 2000, he has practiced law at Gainesville firm of Avra and Smith. Smith served as a member of the Florida Senate from 2000 to 2006. He represented 9 North Florida counties. Senator Smith served as chair of the Agriculture Committee and as vice chair of the Criminal Justice and Justice Appropriations Committee. During his Senate service, he worked closely with the late Senator Jim King of Jacksonville. In fact, Senator King selected Rod to deliver one of 2 eulogies at his memorial service. In the Senate, Rod was known as a bridge builder, someone who brought people together, helped them overcome their differences, and achieve results. We are confident he will help us do the same thing here. With that, I want to now turn it over to my good friend, John Keene, who believes, like I believe, that now's the time to have pension reform done once and for all. He's someone who's working very hard to make sure that at the end of the day, everyone in our city is treated fair. The taxpayers, the city employees, all of us working together to make this a win-win for everyone. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend, John Keene.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, Mr. Moderator, Chief. Good morning. For the record, I am John Keene, the Executive Director and Administrator of the Jacksonville Police and Fire Pension Fund. Our office is at 1 West Adams Street in downtown Jacksonville. On behalf of Pension Trustee Board Chair Walt Busells, Trustees Bobby Deal, Nat Glover, Dr. Adam Herbert, and Richard Tootin III, I extend their greetings to you. This meeting today is authorized by Article 2207B of the City Charter and Paragraph 32 of the Restated Settlement Agreement between the City of Jacksonville and the Police and Fire Pension Fund. The agreement calls for meeting periodically to review the provisions of the agreement, and our discussion shall be guided by the mutual desire to ensure continued application of the terms and conditions that are fair, equitable, and given the current fiscal financial circumstances that have presented themselves that were not addressed or anticipated by the parties upon execution of the restated agreement. By our participation here, the fund is not waiving any of the arguments or rights in any of the pending litigation. The discussions here today and in the future are not collectively bargaining, and neither the board nor I have been authorized to act as a bargaining agent for any bargaining unit. The settlement agreement is not a collective bargaining agreement. Rather, it is a legal contract between the city and the pension board. Today's meetings are held in this public setting solely to comply with the order issued by Judge Wallace, which is currently on appeal to the First District Court of Appeal. As you may be aware, Judge Morales has found that she has jurisdiction in the case of Wise versus the city, which includes the board's cross claims. We believe a resolution of those issues, as well as the implementation of comprehensive pension reform, is in the best interest of all. The board will be conducting a special meeting on Monday, which will include a session with our legal counsel to receive advice concerning the Wise litigation and its relationship to the issues which will be discussed at these upcoming meetings. We look forward to fruitful and meaningful discussions and mutually acceptable resolution on the important issue of comprehensive pension reform. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, if I might, before we begin, I also want to put on the record on behalf of the city that obviously there is litigation pending in federal court, Wise versus City of Jacksonville et al. We are also not waiving any of our rights or arguments under that litigation as well. I just want to add that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. John, thank you.
Good to see you, Senator.
It's good to see all of you. Again, I had hoped perhaps our last time together was our last time together, but we are back here for the purpose of trying to reach an agreement on pension reform that we think everybody would be pleased with. And I want to echo several things that were brought up by both parties. Number one, I couldn't be more in agreement with you, John, that this is not collective bargaining in the sense that I was once in a former life familiar with collective bargaining. That's not what we're here doing. That's not what we're here to do. But it does have some guidance to us in one way, and that is, unlike mediation, which we earlier engaged in, this we've all agreed will be done in the sunshine, which is nothing new to those who have been engaged in collective bargaining. Collective bargaining in Florida has been carried on that way now since the mid-1970s, and even with the police and firefighters, even earlier than that. So I don't see that as an impediment to our being able to reach agreement. I also I note that we are here where there are issues of pending litigation, both in the federal court and, of course, the appeal, and I think some of the cross-appeal issues that have been raised as it relates to the Denton case, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But again, I'm still, while that's on appeal, as a guy who's been practicing law for now approaching 40 years, I'm going to follow the order until the order is no longer the order. And right now, that's the order, and we're going to abide with it. And it will be serve as guidance on some of the proceedings and ways in which we proceed, and I'll talk about those in just a moment. I wouldn't be here as moderator, a title that I find unusual, I've been called so many things over my career.
Myself.
And actually, moderator's in the top 2 or 3%. But I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't know that both sides have genuinely expressed over a long period of time an interest in trying to resolve these issues and a hope that these issues could be resolved, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here for no purpose. I do not favor the city, nor do I favor the pension board. I favor our being able to get an agreement if it can be accomplished. I favor that because I believe that we've told the public that's what we are here to do, and that's what we ought to give our very best efforts at. That doesn't mean everybody's going to agree on everything. I think we know from our past experiences and from our common life experiences that's not going to happen. What I hope is that everybody will, much as we charge juries to do, keep an open mind, listen to the other side, understand what the other side's trying to accomplish, and if we don't agree with it, be prepared to address your concerns, and look for ways to reach accommodation. Look for ways and search for ways together to come up with a roadmap that could lead us to success. A couple of ground rules. I want to go ahead by way of disclosure and tell you that thus far, as most people know, I brought a very small part of the file. I am familiar with many of the issues that bring you together because we've spent much time together last year in an unsuccessful effort, but certainly I come without having forgotten all of that, and certainly with a file a show dog can't jump over to remind me of all of it. So that's where we are. I also will tell you that the executive summary I have prepared, I've looked at the report of the Jacksonville Task Force. I not only have read that and intend to read it more closely, but I also followed that while it was being arrived at, and once it was arrived at. I also have reviewed the final judgment in the Denton case, Judge Wallace's ruling, which we will address a little bit more, and I've gotten some other issues before me, some guidance, as I think one is a letter from one was a letter that was prepared and sent to the City Council regarding fire and pension back in March of 2014 on certain proceedings. And likewise, I've gotten an opinion letter from the General Counsel's office bearing date April of 2014, which has to do with some kind of really just procedural issues. And what I would tell you is if there's anything else anybody wants me to look at or feels like I need to look at, I'm open to reading, reviewing everything, but that's kind of our guidance. Some ground rules. When I agreed to take this assignment, I promised that we were going to have a set period of time to meet, a set period of time towards reaching an agreement, and that I would give it my full attention for a period of time, but that period of time was going to be relatively defined and relatively short, because I feel like that we are not here to rewrite the pension. We're not here to rewrite even agreements that you guys have already arrived at. We're here to write from the beginning those issues of reform which you believe are appropriate to moving this process forward and ending up with pension reform that both sides will see as beneficial to their interest over a long period of time. Having said that, I also wanted to talk a little bit about how I think we're going to proceed. Number one, I believe that part of my responsibilities is to make this thing move orderly. I've determined that the responsibility for advancing proposed changes initially, I believe, lies with the city, not with the board. Therefore, I think it's the responsibility of the city to come forward with the initial package of reforms that you would see as necessary. and that you want to have discussed each and be prepared to explain fully each of your positions and the reasons for those positions. And so I hereby tell you that unless otherwise objected to, that's how we'll proceed. The city will have the responsibility of bringing to the board its package of proposed reforms. Is that okay with everyone?
Acceptable.
Secondly, I know that next week we have agreed to meet on Tuesday and Thursday. I say we haven't agreed to meet yet, but I know that we have. I've asked everybody to clear their calendar. I'm available Tuesday and Thursday. Is that available to the city?
Yes.
Is that available to you, John?
It is.
Okay. Based on that, we will. And I do this because I think it's important for public notice purposes that we at least give people. We will have meetings next week, and the times of those meetings will be Tuesday. At Tuesday, I have 8:30, but since I know I'm coming over that morning and I just faced traffic, all due respect, Mayor, it's going to be 9. Because at 8:30, I was sitting dead still this morning. So we're going to make it 9. At 9 o'clock on Tuesday, we will meet back in this room. Unless otherwise told, this will be the meeting. This is for the public's benefit. The meetings will be here unless we're otherwise directed. So we will be here at 9 o'clock, at which time I will expect the City of Jacksonville to advance its package of proposed changes to the board. I would also say that, please, it was the responsibility of the advancing party, make sure there are some additional, at least one additional copy available in some format for the public. Because I want to be clear on this. Unlike some the ways mediation works, I believe that the sense of the order from the circuit court will require that every proposal and counter proposal that is made will be made at this table or its equivalent. That is, we will not, and I will not carry side messages. We may talk separately, and both sides may talk to me separately, but anything in the form of a proposal or an advancement will be made at the table, and any counter proposals will be made at the table. That way there will be no sense that the public has in any way been deprived of the same information that we're working on. Again, there will be times, and I think just common sense and experience tells you this, there'll be times that you two I may want you two to break off and think things over separately, and you may want to talk amongst yourselves, and I may talk with you. But I will not carry messages back and forth to one another. I will not take proposals back and forth to one another. I may listen to your concerns, or you may tell me you don't want me to listen to your concern, and I will sit here and wait till you come back in the room. So everybody understand there will be proposals will only be advanced that way, and everybody agree to that. You agree with that, John?
Agreed.
Yes,
City?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have Monday at 9 o'clock, Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and we have Thursday. And Thursday, I didn't have set at a specific time. I would recommend, again, 9 o'clock for Thursday. Does that work for everyone?
Mr. Smith, if we could start a little later on Thursday, just because I know the mayor has a conflict first thing in the morning. So if it's possible to start, say, either at 9:30 or even better, 10 o'clock, I think that'd be perfect.
10 o'clock, John?
I have a conflict at 10 o'clock, but I'm going to get out of it. This is very important.
Okay,
10 o'clock is good.
10 o'clock will work.
10 o'clock will work.
Okay. Let's make it then, so to be clear, we're going to be Tuesday at 9 and Thursday at 10. Now, I want to move into the next week for scheduling purposes. This would be, so that we're clear on this would be the week that I believe begins the 12th. Is that correct? Is that what you have? That would be the week beginning the 12th. I'd like to schedule at least 2 days out of the first 3 of that week if possible. How does Monday look for everyone on the 12th?
I have a conflicting meeting I cannot change that lasts between 11 and 2. We can start, take the break, take a longer lunch period, and then take up after that.
I think what we will do, John, in respect to that is that, let me check Tuesday. How's Tuesday for everyone?
We have flexibility on both Monday and Tuesday. What I suggest is just to sort of, again, keep it moving forward. If, John, what time is your conflict on Monday? I'm sorry.
11 to 2.
11 to 2.
If might be appropriate if we were able to start, say, at 9 on Monday, at least work for a couple hours.
Sure.
Okay. We have to return. Now, there is, just to be clear, there is Jacksonville Port Task Force meeting, I believe, in this room on Monday afternoon, so we might need to make some alternative arrangements for the afternoon, but we can start there at 9.
I will leave that up to the parties as to location, but as soon as you arrive at a location, please put out a press release on that so the public will know that there's been a change of location. We are going to meet 9 on Monday. We know we're going to have a break in the Monday proceedings for some few hours. We will plan to reconvene at 2 o'clock that afternoon, or 2:15, whatever you need to get back over here. Then on Tuesday, we will again start at 9 o'clock, and we will try to go through Tuesday. That will be the 13th. And I'm going to pick one more day, because I plan on that week, hopefully being our last. Is Wednesday better, or is Thursday better for your one more day that week?
Thursday's better for us, but we can
Okay.
do Wednesday too, if that's better with the chief.
We can do either. I think Wednesday would be slightly preferable. We'd have to start a little bit later. It might be that whatever day we do, Wednesday or Thursday, our preference would be to start in the early afternoon.
On Wednesday?
We could do early afternoon Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay, let's do the afternoon Wednesday and then Thursday, and that's what we're going to calendar. And on Thursday, we'll start at 9 o'clock unless otherwise provided.
Again, both of those days, Mr. Smith, if we can start in the afternoon.
Okay.
of Wednesday.
We'll start, I'm going to show Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to show Thursday at 1 o'clock. Now, I want to,
We will confirm, obviously, we need to go back, and we will confirm these, because our plan would be to notice, once we nail on the exact date and location, we would notice all these today.
unless we otherwise provide, we know now that we have a Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and we have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the following weeks, that some portion of those days will be dedicated to this process. That's as far out as I'm willing to go, because my goal was, as I told you in the beginning, that I wanted to be available by the middle of the month. I think that kind of gets me where I want to go. I want to make one suggestion. I'll just make sure something on my calendar. That's okay. Yep. All right. Okay. Now, with that housekeeping, I want to talk about a couple of rules that I suggest that we use for operating, because I think they are important for our orderly accomplishment of our work. Number one, John, I don't know what your plans are to have anybody else with you at various times, but anybody that you bring on your side of the table, you just designate who that is. I don't know if it'll be Bob or somebody else, but whoever you have bring with you, just introduce them as part of it, and they will be recognized as your side. The reason I say that is because I believe that while this is a public meeting, I believe that the time for public discussion of the matters that we raise in this meeting as part of this process is not going to occur. By that I mean we're not going to take public input on proposals or counter proposals, and we're not going to hear people talk about what they think we should and shouldn't do. Ultimately, if you all are able to reach agreement, there will be a time by which the public will have dramatic ability to impact the final product, and that final product will be when it will go before your city council, and your city council, of course, is governed by its comments and its allow for public input. I think that to allow outside comment in this process when we're talking about trying to forge an agreement is counterproductive to our purposes, and so it is my intention that, and I am familiar with this area of the law somewhat, although I don't hold myself as an expert, and I believe there are times when things are open to the public without requiring public comment beyond that of the participants at the table. That does not mean that you can't bring in somebody else in an area of expertise if you want to on your side of the table. You absolutely can. Just at the beginning of each meeting, we'll declare who's going to be speaking, And the same for you, John. Is that satisfactory with everybody?
Satisfactory for us.
Yeah, satisfactory.
All right. By way of background, I would suggest the following. I have before me a Reform Task Force report bearing date March 19th, 2014. I know you guys are well aware of this report. What I would like the city and the board to do is I want you to take the agreements that we have in place. I think that would be an agreement that you referenced earlier in your presentation, John, without conceding whether or not that's your legal position. For purposes of our discussion, that would be the agreement that you referred to and sometimes call the 30-year agreement. We have agreements that we previously reached which have been not passed and accepted by the council, and then we have this Reform Task Force. I would like to see your proposals be based on the task force reports or responses. I mean, we could use any one of those things as our starting point, but it seems to me that there's been a great deal of effort expended by people who spent a lot of time, took a lot of public input, gave a broad base to their ideas. So what I'd like you to do next week is we will work off of the report of the task force. That doesn't mean that anybody's bound to accept the task force conclusions in total, but that's the way we will proceed, is kind of working from that point. We could go back to what we'd agreed to earlier, that has some issues, or we could go back to that does not mean that what's been earlier agreed to may not very much. I've reviewed this, and sometimes they are exactly the same thing, and sometimes the agreements that have previously been reached are already encompassed in this. We just have to have a starting point, and I'm going to use this as a starting point unless somebody sorely objects. The task force report, your proposal should be based on what the task force reported. Your responses should be based on that. That does not suggest for a moment that we can't go back to any of these other, including status quo, as your position or your response or your counter position or counter response. Everybody okay with that?
I would note that the task force was careful not to make any recommendations on benefit changes. And if that's what we're going to be talking about, we're going to have to take a second path at that. The main recommendations in the task force had to do with governance, and I think we're going to be more inclined to be talking about long-term benefit changes. Is that not correct?
Well, let me respond.
Talk to both of them.
Let me respond to that. I'm not going to restrict anybody for bringing up anything. I'm not sure that I read the report exactly that way, but I will certainly say there was an emphasis on governance in the report. There's no question about that.
Correct.
But there were other issues that were covered in this report.
That's right.
And once again, when I start saying things like benefits, it's such a broad-ranging term, I'm not going to really get into that debate. What I am going to say is that we have to have a starting point. We're going to use as a starting point the recommendations of the task force. That does not bind, limit, constrain what other terms there will be anybody from talking about things that we previously have tried to agree to in past sessions, or from talking about things that have been agreed to with past administrations. All of those things are on the table. You're never going to get there if you turn a blind eye to what got us here. So, but for purposes of our starting point, we're going to start and discuss proposals either that were specifically included in the task force or were inculcated in the task force findings because they reference previous agreements. Okay? Everybody okay with that?
Okay.
All right. So that will be your responsibility. And you understand your responsibility Monday will be you'll put a package on the table. And Mr. Mayor, when I say y'all, I'm talking to y'all collectively.
Sure. Talking to the city. I get it.
Yeah. And so,
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Did I say Monday? Tuesday, our first session. The other thing I wanted to kind of touch base on because I thought was important is that either side can at any time ask to caucus. And let me give you an example. You shall, I hope, bring in your proposals, and you're going to be explaining those proposals. And John, either you alone or you in conjunction with some people who may not be ready to immediately respond. You may be and you may not be. All you have to do is request a period of time to caucus or and we'll do that. Same with the city when John comes back, or if John comes back with counter proposals or responses to your stuff, same thing. I don't expect people, you can ask questions across the table. I would ask you to, because of orderliness, let's try to address me first, so we don't get into yelling across the table at one another, which sometimes happens. We don't want that to occur. But my point is to moderate and facilitate, so we're going to do it that way. Also, it is not my role to take sides, but I can tell you in advance, I will try to formulate questions that I think are questions that ought to be asked about every one of the proposals or counter proposals, because I think that goes back to things that we certainly want to make sure we don't leave anything undone. If I ask a question, or if I refrain from asking a question, that should not be read by either side as somehow my trying to take the other side's position. I think, like anybody who's trying to moderate something, I want to make sure that we get a full fleshing of the discussion, so that later, when we reach an agreement, if that happens, and I'm hopeful that it will, that everybody had a chance to fully consider what they were agreeing to. And finally, as I understand it, between these two parties, it is agreed, and this was a condition of my accepting to do this, is that between these two parties, and recognizing these two parties, don't limit anybody else, but as between these two parties, in playing my role as moderator, I will not later, by either of these parties, be considered as a witness as to any discussions that I've had with either side, or as for purposes of my giving an interpretation of what the intention was of any of the provisions that are agreed upon. The intention will be as stated from the parties. The intention will be as stated in the plain language that is used, and the intention, and my role here is not to make a judgment about whether or not it's a wise decision or who it favors. My role here is simply to try to facilitate agreement. Everybody, the city agrees with that?
Yes.
The board agrees with that?
Certainly.
All right. With that, questions from you guys for today. Anything else that by organizationally you think that I should address today that I've not addressed today in guiding how we're going to proceed?
So one of the things I wanted to put on the record, just expanding what I said previously, I mentioned that obviously, and Mr. Keen's made this clear, and we have, in terms of not waiving our rights or arguments under the live litigation in federal court, as you referred to, there's a separate piece of litigation, an ending case in state court. Again, I just want to put on the record, the city's not waiving the arguments or rights. It has to pertain to that litigation, which is currently on appeal before the court.
Yeah, so that we're clear on this. When I decided to do this, I consider this to be a public effort to reach an agreement. Nobody who's participating in this, I'm not reading that as, and I don't read that as a waiver, and I think both parties have said their participation is to preserve any rights they otherwise have, that they are here solely for the purposes of what would be called settlement discussions. Is that correct from the city's perspective? Yes?
Yes.
And from yours, the board's perspective?
That's our position.
Okay. So with that, I think we're clear that we're trying to facilitate agreement, and that nobody's abandoning any arguments, nobody's endorsing any arguments that might otherwise be advanced. This is settlement discussions to see whether or not between these parties we might effectuate pension reform. Anything else procedurally that you think we need to cover today?
There's one scheduling matter I wanted to raise, Mr.
Please.
Chair. We had sort of talked about starting at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. I know the mayor's got a conflict. I wonder if it works for Mr. King to start at 10 on Tuesday as opposed to 9. It's Tuesday, May the 6th.
Much better time.
Okay, great. So we could plan to start at 10 on the 6th as opposed to 9. That would be very helpful. And we'd also start on 10, at 10 on Thursday evening.
Got them both. And the others are at 1. On
9
2,
a.m.
9 a.m. is on Monday, and then the other 2 are at 1.
Yeah, Wednesday and Wednesday
All right.
and 14th.
Do you think we've scheduled enough sessions there, gentlemen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. All right, John, is there anything, Mr. Mayor, either one, is there anything that we haven't addressed today organizationally that you think will be important to our success?
No, sir, I think that the outline that you prepared is a good one. The Police and Fire Pension Board has long been committed to comprehensive pension reform, and now is the time, and this is the place to start the journey to wrap it up.
You know, I was raised Baptist, so I'd normally say amen at that point. So.
All right, you may.
Well, first of all, I agree with John. You know, as mayor, I made a commitment that I would provide the leadership to get retirement reform settled once and for all. I'm committed to seeing it through, and I think the timelines and the scheduled meetings, I think, are enough. I think the goal is to get it done. And as you said and you noted, a lot of work has been done. And as I said before, this is more than about numbers. It really is about the quality of life in our city. It's about all the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of every kid in this city. It's really about making sure that at the end of the day, we have a city where people want to live, work, and play and raise a family. And there are a lot of public safety officers, first responders, who work hard every day on our behalf so that we can enjoy our freedom, we can live in peace. And I think as mayor, I want to make sure that maybe we have 5 meetings scheduled. Maybe we'll get it done in 4. But I think this should be it. I think we can do this. I'm very optimistic about it because we both parties love this city, believe in this city, care about this city, and I think we have an opportunity to get it done.
And also, before we adjourn, you referenced the Jacksonville Retirement Reform Task Force report. The chairman of that group is here. He led 16 of our citizens for a 7-month period on a long journey. And on behalf of the board and our members, we appreciate the time and talent that they gave to that effort. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Court Reporter, please, and do this, gentlemen, or ladies, the next time we have ladies with us, please make sure that each of you identifies yourself to the court reporter before the beginning of each session. Or John, anybody new that you bring, make sure they introduce themselves so that she can go ahead and get down correctly the names of the people, because I don't really like to play that thing where we announce our name every time before we speak. In this smaller group, she'll know who you are once she gets it down. She's absolutely effective at doing this. And also, if you could, when you see me use grammar that's not going to look good, please fix that. With that, if there's no further matters for today, we will start on Tuesday, and our first order of business on Tuesday will be the city's advancing its proposed reform changes. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.